The Nastran data loader, or ZNDAL for short, can be accessed through the Import Nastran Input-Output using ZNDAL menu option. This brings up the dialog as shown here, which contains several sections. The top is to read view model from Nastran bulk data or Astros bulk data input deck. Likewise, we can read it from the Nastran output deck or the Astros output deck. We can read, view, model, and output results from the input and output deck or from the output deck alone. Now, if we're going to read the model from any of the output decks, we need to ensure that the bulk data has been echoed to the standard output file. So this loader can be used to load Nastran models and basic Nastran analysis results, such as displacements due to statics analysis, normal modes, and grid point stress or GPS stress, directly from the Nastran input or standard output decks. The loader uses a template file that defines the bulk data to process and display, and as such can be modified to process other types of Nastran input decks if desired. So for example, here is the template that defines the Nastran, and here's the one for Astros. If we click on it, it'll bring it up the template definitions in Notepad, and the user can modify the bulk data to add or remove new bulk data as desired if necessary. Otherwise, you normally won't ever have to touch these files if you're sticking with, for example, MSC Nastran type of bulk data. So for the current demonstration case, we'll load an F16 structure model, and once loaded, we can use the zone settings to modify the model. So first we'll go select the model, and the typical extension for Nastran is BDF for input decks, but we can also select DAT format, which is also widely used. And here we have an F16 structure model. Click OK, and it will load the structure model and display it in the view. Now, as always, we can use the controls view to change the orientation, and middle mouse button to zoom, right mouse button to pan the model. So we can also use the zone settings window to tailor what's being displayed, what type of elements. For example, if we wish to only view the C-beam elements and their associated grids, we can do that through here. When we bring up the zone settings and we've loaded a Nastran model, every element will be loaded in a separate zone, so they can be isolated if desired. In parentheses here, it shows you the number of elements loaded for each of those zones. So if we want to just display the C-beam, what we can do is click the first entry, hold the Shift key, click the last entry, it will highlight all of them. We deactivate the zone so that nothing is displayed. Then we click on white space and then click on C-beam to highlight that one, and we activate this particular zone. So if we close the window, now we see only the C-beam elements in the model. If we want to see the grids that are used for these C-beam elements, we can click on the nodes switch on the controls view, and then we can view the model in this fashion. As a final note, when loading a Nastran model, the output message window will give you some feedback. For example, the total number of grids in the model we see here as 1,422. Output sets that are loaded. Total number of Nastran elements. Here we have 2,304 that make up this model. It's a relatively small model. And the number of internal elements after breaking down. What this refers to is that only quadrilateral and triangular type elements are displayed. So if we have solid elements, for example, a hexahedron element, the program will break those down into 6 faces of quadrilateral elements. So in that case, a single hexahedron element would be broken down into 6 quad elements. Therefore, this number would be increased if we had 3D elements, and this would just give you the total number of primitive elements that were generated. And finally, the total number of zones represents the total number of different elements that were loaded from the model.